So we just love celebrating moments like that because those individuals are marking a significant breakthrough in their life, right? Something in their life is changing and turning, and so they decided to be baptized. I just want you to know that we're doing baptisms later today, and we've already got 2 people that are going to be baptized. I think that there might be others in the room that need to do that as well, and if today is the day for you, you need to mark that breakthrough. We actually only had 1 scheduled at the last service, and we had 3 in addition come to be baptized. We had 4 total baptisms at the last service. So just go ahead and start thinking about that for yourself. We are closing out a series today called Breakthrough, and we believe barriers are meant to be broken. I want to welcome you to Compass Christian Church. My name is Luke Davidson. I'm the campus pastor here at the North Richland Hills campus, and we have talked about breaking through some of the most significant barriers in our lives. We've talked about breaking through disappointment and discontentment in our lives. We've talked about breaking through addiction. We've talked about breaking through bad habits, even sorrow, the tragic things that kind of lock us down emotionally. And so if you've missed any of those messages, I really want to encourage you to go back and listen to them because there's some really powerful things that we have talked about. And you can always go back. If you ever miss any service or message, you can listen to those on our website, mycompasschurch.com. You can also stream on with us live every Sunday on Facebook, Compass Church NRH. In fact, would y'all make some noise for everybody watching us and attending on Facebook Live right now? I want to thank y'all for streaming it. And I want to encourage you, if you're on Facebook Live right now, make sure that you chat with our host today. If you have something that you need them to pray with you about, or even to just have a conversation about, we would love to help you. And that's what they are there to do for you. Today, as we close out this series, Breakthrough, I want to talk about breaking through pain. And there's all sorts of pain that we deal with. There's like knee pain, arthritis in your joints and stuff like that. Then there's like the pain of the guy at work that you just can't stand. You know, you say you're such a pain in the neck sort of thing. Of course, there's T-pain. Anybody like T-pain? There was like one person in the last service that liked that. He doesn't even know who is T-pain. The charter of auto-tune pop. It's like, it's important. No, it's not. Is it? But the pain that I want to talk about today, all sorts of pain in the world, but the pain specifically that I want to talk about today is the kind of pain where somebody hurts you. And you say, man, you betrayed me. You hurt me. You caused pain in my life. We might even call that betrayal. I ran across a podcast called From Betrayal to Breakthrough. And I was like, man, that is the perfect title for what I'm talking about in this series. And so I gave it a listen. And Dr. Debbie Silber does this podcast, and she shared some things on there that I thought were really powerful I wanted to share with you. She said that betrayal is when you have an unwritten rule or expectation for somebody, and then they break it. And maybe you never even actually communicated that to them, but you just kind of thought it was understood between the two of you, an expectation, an unwritten rule, and then they broke that. And so people in a position of authority this could happen with. So if you have a teacher or a coach or even a parent, and you just thought, if I do what you tell me to do, everything will be fine because I trust you. But then they did something inappropriate or something harmful, and that really betrayed your trust. Betrayal. Maybe you feel betrayed by God because you had this unwritten expectation or rule with God that, hey, if I go to church, if I live a good life, I'll be prosperous. Everything will be great. And then something bad happens, and you say, God, you have betrayed me. You let me down. I had this expectation. You didn't come through on your end of the bargain. Maybe you betray yourself because sometimes we say things or we have these convictions and then we don't follow through with them. And that can feel like a self-betrayal to yourself, and you can kind of live with guilt in your own heart and your mind. Maybe you have betrayal with a friend because you thought you could share your story with them safely and that they would protect your story, your secret, but then they told your secret. Feels like a betrayal. Maybe with your siblings. She said, sometimes siblings will have this unwritten rule or expectation that when mom and dad reach an elderly age, we'll be there to take care of them together. We'll do it together. But then that day comes and your siblings are nowhere to be found and you feel like you're shouldering all of the weight and the burden yourself. Feels like a really significant betrayal. What happens in those moments is without your awareness and your consent, somebody else just chooses to put their own needs before yours or their own expectations before your expectations. And that can really feel like the rug is just pulled out from underneath of you. It feels like a shock. And maybe for the first time, Feels like maybe they took a mask off and you see who they really are. And you can feel blindsided, perhaps. And maybe you even start to feel shame and embarrassment because of it. You say, man, I should have seen this coming. And I'm embarrassed. I don't even want to tell other people about it because then they'll wonder why I didn't take care of this. And they'll think, well, you're just not prudent. You're not wise enough. You're not shrewd enough. And you think, man, I just feel foolish. I don't want other people to know about this. I just feel shame. I feel embarrassed. But the truth is, we've all felt betrayed before, haven't we? Yeah? I know I have. I think it's ironic that months ago, we planned to preach on this. And here I am, because over the last couple of weeks, I have dealt with a situation that felt like a significant betrayal in a lot of ways. And I have dealt with emotions of anger and helplessness and bewilderment, and especially insecurity. And so I can relate to that. I know that you can relate to this. Even Jesus was betrayed. Maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. One of his main followers, one of his 12 guys that he singled out and said, you're like the chosen 12. One of those guys named Judas betrayed Jesus and pointed him out to the authorities that came and arrested him to be killed for 30 pieces of silver. He sold him. He sold him. He couldn't deal with the guilt following that, and so he hung himself. It's a tragic story. So that's the most popular betrayal of Jesus. A lesser known betrayal came from another, maybe even more chosen and select disciple. His name was Peter. And Peter denied even knowing Jesus in Jesus' greatest hour of need. When all these false accusations were coming against Jesus and he was on trial, he needed somebody to testify to his character. Peter was nowhere to be found, certainly not stepping up and testifying. He denied even knowing Jesus. And yet the way that Jesus reacted to that betrayal is really a breakthrough. And that's what I wanted to discover today. And what he shows us, I'm going to go ahead and give it to you right from the start. To restore is greater than revenge. Restore is greater than revenge. It is. And I would say in a really significant way, we saw that this past week with that trial that was all over social media in Dallas, the police officer who had gone into an apartment, someone was shot and killed, and then the family member at the sentencing chose to, out loud in public, forgive the police officer. And there's all sorts of things where people are pointing fingers at each other and you did this, you shouldn't have been there, And they could have chosen to continue in a path of division and retaliation and revenge. And instead, an incredible moment of restore. And I think it's inspired all of us to maybe confront some of the big obstacles in our lives that maybe we've chosen to turn from or seek revenge or feel betrayed and hurt by. And maybe we also can confront things that are huge in our lives and seek to restore pain. Would you open up in your Bible with me to Psalm 55? Psalm 55. We've been looking at Psalms throughout this entire series. Today I want to look at Psalm 55. And if you have ever been hurt, angry, betrayed, if you've ever wanted revenge against someone who really, really hurt you and betrayed you, you say, I want to get revenge against that person, you can relate to Psalm 55. I'm just saying you can. It was written by King David. Right at the beginning it says it was for the choir director by David to be accompanied by stringed instruments. That's in the Bible, by the way. So you get a little setting of the environment of maybe what this sounded like. And so I'm trying to imagine, what did this music sound like? Music of betrayal and everything. I'm just guessing. I bet it sounded like music from The Godfather. You think maybe? Any Godfather fans? I mean, there's a lot of pain and betrayal in the Godfather movie. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse sort of stuff. Honestly, not a bad comparison for this psalm in some ways. Look at verse 12. It's not an enemy who taunts me. I could bear that. It's not my foes who so arrogantly insult me. I could have hidden from them. Instead, it is you, my equal, my companion, my close friend. So we find out this is not just an enemy of David. This was a friend who severely betrayed him. And maybe you've had somebody in your life that you were close to. That makes it hurt way worse. If it was just somebody distant, somebody at work that was trying to gun for your job, and you get that. But a friend, man, that makes it hurt way more than it ever would have hurt otherwise. It also causes you to be more angry about it. And anger can get the best of us. Anger definitely got the best of King David. Look at what he says in verse 15 and 23 and tell me this doesn't sound like the Godfather talking right here. He says, let death stalk my enemies. Let the grave swallow them alive, for evil makes its home within them. But you, O God, will send the wicked down to the pit of destruction. Murderers and liars will die young, but I'm trusting you to save me. Well, David, why don't you tell us how you really feel? That'd be great. Doesn't that sound like a little Don Corleone right there? Leave the gun, take the cannoli sort of moment right there. And sometimes maybe you read things like that. Honestly, maybe it makes you feel better about some things that you've said and felt toward a person or a situation where you were betrayed. And you said some really harsh things. You say, man, wasn't that bad. I didn't tell him to go to hell or anything like that. I mean, that was intense what David just said right there. And so we find these moments where we respond to somebody and we say, I'm just angry and I'm hurting. And this is important for us to remember. We say this a lot at Compass, but we just want to say it again because it's so true. And sometimes we need to look in the mirror and evaluate ourselves. Hurt people hurt people. That's what you do. When you're hurting, you lash out at others, some who deserve it and many who don't. And there are people in your house, there are people in your office, there are people in your neighborhood who think you hate them. They think that you don't like them. And it's really not directed at them. You're just hurting and you're angry at somebody else. But that pain, you've poured it out against your spouse or against your kids, against your neighbor, maybe even against a friend. So if you just ignore that hurt, it's not just going to go away in and of itself. I've heard it said my whole life, time doesn't always heal wounds. If it did, people would sit outside of the doctor's office instead of going in. So let me just challenge you today. If you've been hurt, you need to dig into that hurt and you need to find a way to release it, even to restore it. And you might even find in the process that you restore yourself. You have to have ways to dig in. When I felt betrayed, had to go to a park. I had to get some space, clear my head, and just kind of get some space in order to process what was going on in my heart and my mind. I had to vent to my wife and just say a bunch of things. But honestly, I felt like as I evaluated and processed where that was coming from, the anger and the aggression really came from a place of fear. I was scared, was insecure, was worried about the well-being of myself and the well-being of my family. Question, do you have somebody or some group or community in your life, a safe place where you can go and dig into the pain in your life and release it and share it? Do you have a safe place like that? Because if you don't, you need to do that. And you need to find that in your life. And you need to find a person or a group or community that is safe to dig in with your feelings and share with others. There's some people who are not safe. I think you know who that person is. You probably shouldn't share this with them. But if you don't have a person like that, you need to find, maybe it's a counselor, maybe it's one of the ministries that we offer here in our church. You say, I want to go there and get into that community. I want to start to dig in to release and to share what's making me angry, what hurt, what the pain that was caused in my life, and to do so safely. Let me also say that if you're the person that's being vented to, like somebody came to you and sharing stuff with you, let me just give you a couple of guidelines. Number one, it's not necessarily your job to go and fix it. You're just there to listen and to let them release and to vent and to dig. That's your primary role. Your job is not always to go and fix it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you hear something like, hey, I have to report this. Absolutely. But not always your job to go and say, confront somebody else. Hey, he said that, you said that, she said this, and then this, blah, 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 blah. That is not helpful. Not your job. Your job is also not to necessarily rebuke the person who's talking to you, because they might say some things that they don't really mean. You just need to let them dig, vent, release. And if they say some crazy things, which they might, you circle back a week later, or a day later, or even a few hours later and say, hey, you said some crazy things. You remember when you said that you wanted the grave to swallow them whole and for God to send them to hell? You remember that? That sounded a little Don Corleone-ish. Tell me more about that. To which they might say, hey, I'm so sorry. Thank you for being a safe place to come. I didn't really mean that stuff. I was just really hurting. And, just getting it out helped me understand that I didn't really mean those things. And I'm really sorry that I even burdened you with that stuff. Can you forgive me? In which you'll probably say, hey, man, it's totally fine. I get it. I'm glad that you felt comfortable sharing that stuff with me. Let's get back together in a day or two or something. Just continue to see how you're doing. how you're processing this stuff. That is incredibly, incredibly important for you to be able to vent safely to others and for them to be able to vent and dig safely to you. Now, if you don't have a safe person or a safe place to turn to, let me reiterate that we have a lot of care and support ministries in our church that you might not even be aware of. And I just want to highlight two right here. One is our one-to-one care. These are volunteers that are trained rigorously. They train for a lengthy time in order to be prepared to help you dig in and to process your pain. We also have professional counselors that we partner with at His Story Counseling and Coaching. You can get connected with either of those two ministries and many other ministries that are also listed at mycompasschurch.com/care. If you don't have a safe person or safe place, get into one of those ministries. Connect with one of those avenues, a safe place to dig in and to begin to release and restore pain in your heart and in your mind. Now, it seems that King David maybe had a chance to process some of his anger and his aggression and his fear and insecurity, because he actually gives us in verse 22 what I would call a breakthrough for pain. It's an incredible verse that's even quoted again by Peter in the New Testament. But this is where it comes from. Psalm 55:22. He says, "Give your burdens to the Lord, and He will take care of you. He will not permit the godly to slip and fall." That phrase, "give your burdens," is actually tamed pretty significantly. It means to throw. It means to cast. So just imagine going by somebody and egging their house, which is what you want to do when you feel betrayed. You just want to say, I'm going to buy a dozen eggs, I'm going to egg your house, right? Or your car or something like that. I'm going to throw these things. And God tells you, throw all that mess and that junk and that pain and that hatred and all that dirty stuff, throw it at me. Throw it at God. Give your burdens to the Lord, and He'll take care of it. He can handle it. He is way bigger than the things that you're throwing at Him. And He says, hey, don't lash out at each other. Bring that stuff, throw it at me. I can take it. And so this is where we get our big idea for today, two parts. The first part is this: let God heal your pain. Let God heal your pain. That's His job. That's His specialty. He specializes. He is the comforter. He is the advocate. He is the defender. That is His job, is to heal your pain. And let Him deal with the source of it. Let Him deal with the source of it. Your job is not to get revenge against the person or the source. There are consequences. There are laws through justice, through life, through different things. God will take care of it. There are committees. There are things that need to happen, probation periods. I'm not saying that. I am saying not your job. Your job is not to get revenge, because that's not going to make it better. You're going to cause even more division and more hurt and guilt in your life if you try to get revenge. Also not the answer to just bottle it up. The bitterness will build, the pressure you will unload, probably not on the person that you're angry with, probably on your husband or your wife, probably on your kids, because they're the ones who will be closest to you when you explode. So don't just bottle it up. Don't just try to get revenge against people. That's God's job to deal with the source of it. Your job, my job, our job is to restore. And so I want to get back to that original idea that I kind of threw out there. Restore is greater than revenge. It is. I mentioned earlier that Jesus was betrayed by Peter. Peter was His most loyal and bold disciple, or at least that's the picture that we get as you read through the books in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You get this picture that Peter's always stepping up boldly. He's courageous. Just kind of that attitude is like, who are you talking to? I'm the rock. I'm Peter, which actually is what Peter means. If you ever wondered, that name has a meaning. His real name was Simon, and Jesus named him Peter, which means rock. Saying, you're the rock, man. You're solid. You're bedrock. I can count on you. You're firm. You're solid. And so that's the kind of bravado, it's the kind of presence that Peter had. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Can you smell what the rock is cooking? Sort of person. He's got that sort of personality. He's strong. But when the real storm came, and this immovable cliff face that the waves would beat against, he would never move. Well, when the real storm came, Peter crumbled. When Judas betrayed Jesus and everything started to fall apart, and Peter's leader was being held on trial by all of these really powerful guards and really powerful officials, and he was being falsely accused, and it looked totally doomsday scenario. Where was Jesus's rock? Where was Peter, His most bold and loyal disciple? Hiding in the shadows, in the very courtyard where Jesus was being falsely accused. He just needed somebody to testify to his character. Where was Peter? Hiding by a fireplace. And in the pressure, Peter crumbled like a sandcastle. Another was standing by the fire where Peter was, and the light of the fire flickered across his face. He recognized Peter. He said, "You're one of his disciples, aren't you?" "No, I'm not," Peter said. "Yes, you are," said another. "I can tell by your accent. You're from up north," where he's from too. "I swear to God, I don't know him. Leave me alone." But you're offended by what I just said. That's literally about what Peter said. "But I saw you with him in the olive grove when he was arrested earlier," a woman said. "No, you didn't, you crazy woman. That never happened." And then verse 75, Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me." And he went away, weeping bitterly. Maybe you can relate to that because not all of us are in Jesus' shoes. We're not all the one who was betrayed. Maybe you're the one who betrayed somewhere else. You betrayed another person. You're in Peter's position. And you betrayed a spouse. You betrayed your kids. Something that they expected of you, an employee who trusted you, who needed you, who counted on you, and you let them down. There's a lot of pain in that too. A lot of shame and embarrassment for what we did or didn't do. And in our world, when that sort of thing happens, relationships are destroyed and division occurs. You think, well, we're not going to be friends anymore because this thing happened. They did this thing or I did this thing, and well, that's gone. I'll never have that friend again. Or even worse. Now you live paranoid that they're going to get you back. They're going to pay you back. They're going to get revenge for something that you did, or you did something to them, or whatever it is. Now you're living in fear or paranoia because of what happened. Will it happen again? Because if Peter denies Jesus, well, eye for an eye and tit for tat, Jesus denies Peter, right? I mean, that's just how the world works. That's how we understand it. And so Jesus says, "Peter, you denied me, I deny you. You're not going to have any part in the kingdom of God. You're not forgiven. I mean, I gave everything for you. I died for you. And where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I was being falsely accused and people were testifying against me? You were nowhere. So you deny me, I deny you." But that's not what happens, is it? Jesus does not deny Peter. Fast forward a few days after Jesus had been killed, he was executed. And then he came back to life, which changed everything for everybody. They said, well, maybe this guy really is who he said he is. He raised back to life. Who is this guy? And they start to track back the things that he said and did in his life. And I think this is incredible. And God brought him back to life. And then these same disciples who had fled in fear started to get bold and courageous themselves and said, well, if they killed him, I was afraid we were going to be killed that same night. So we fled and hid. But then God brought him back to life. So if death can't stop what God is doing, then we're not scared either. And so they got bold and they got courageous. And then several weeks went by, spending time with Jesus, training and developing in boldness and courage. But still, it was several weeks until we see a moment where Peter and Jesus come face to face, maybe a little awkward. A few weeks later, at the Sea of Galilee up north, back where they were from. And it says in John chapter 21 that they had breakfast together with all the disciples. And there Jesus begins an important conversation with Peter. Verse 15. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, and he said this, "Simon, son of John." Notice he didn't call him Peter. Is that because Peter crumbled like a sandcastle when the pressure was on? I don't know. Maybe it's just him using his formal name because this is a formal moment of restoration. He says, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Not do you know me, which is the question that he had been asked 3 times in that courtyard by the fire. Do you know him? No, I don't know him. Do you know him? No, I don't know him. Here Jesus says, do you love me? Face to face, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And maybe with a look of confusion on his face, wondering why he was asking the question a second time. He said, yes, Lord. You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time, Jesus asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. And maybe in this moment, the power of this moment of restoration came into focus for Peter, because it was 3 times that he had denied knowing Jesus. And now 3 times face to face, he affirms loving Jesus, and it hurts, but it's so powerful and it's so good. He said, Lord, you know everything, and you know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. An incredible moment of restoration. An example for you and I to follow. And so what we see here is that Peter denied Jesus, but Jesus didn't deny Peter. Jesus restores Peter. The one who was betrayed restored his betrayer. Now, I know that's not possible for all of you in this room and probably not healthy for every single circumstance. For some of you, the person who betrayed you, maybe they're not even alive anymore. But I'm just saying, if it is possible and if it is healthy, can I encourage you today to restore the person who betrayed you? I just want you to imagine for a moment how that would just significantly change your family dynamic in your household if you could restore the person who betrayed you. If daddy could be at home as the kids grow up, even though he betrayed you. You say, what if we restored and now the kids get to have daddy at home as they grow up? What if you could restore your family so that you could actually sit across from the table from your sister, or your mom and your sister could sit across from the table at dinner at Thanksgiving? Wouldn't that just change it? Imagine if you could do that. Imagine if you could find somebody who had betrayed you and you could restore them, how that could change your work environment. Somebody who gunned for you and it caused all sorts of division and all sorts of terrible things, and you say, I'm going to restore that person. It changes the environment. It begins to change how we understand. Maybe if you could restore your friendships. Some of us, you came from a church where people betrayed you and you were burned, and you lost some really significant spiritual friendships as a result. What if you could restore those friendships, and instead of being paranoid that something's going to come back for you or more division's going to happen in the future, will repeat itself, say, what if we could restore and I could get those friends back again in the future? If only we would do the hard breakthrough work of restoring those who cause pain instead of just denying them. And I think it's an important thing for us to notice that there are still consequences. There's still justice whenever betrayal and bad things happen. But I think there's also space for compassion. And I especially think there's space for hard face-to-face restoration. So I just want to ask you today, who do you need to call and set up a meeting with, and face-to-face, you need to dig into the pain and release it and potentially even restore a person, a situation, even to restore and redeem yourself, because you're the one who has suffered the most from the pain and the betrayal. What if you could have a face-to-face restoration moment and begin to release pain and anger? Not saying that you have to be their friend, not that everything's fine and pretend nothing ever happened, no. But you get to release it and you get to restore it. And I'm guaranteeing you God will do something through that. The other thing is, it's not just you who's being hurt by the pain, it's those around you. Some of you, your husband or your wife or your kids or your parents are just wishing, would you please release and restore that pain? Because you keep pouring it out on them and in other directions instead of dealing with the source, instead of turning and asking God to heal, and instead of restoring those who've betrayed you. I think that would be an incredible breakthrough in your life. And think of how the pain has affected your health and your relationships. What if those things could start to get healthy again? And you could find people around you who are being redeemed. And whenever you redeem them, the truth is we know that we redeem and we restore ourselves in those moments. Galatians chapter 6 says this, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Restore. It means to take somebody who is on the wrong path and put them on the right path, to change their standing, put them on the right path. It's also used, this word, to talk about repairing nets, like fishing nets in the New Testament. Sometimes they use this word for that, or to perfect or to complete. And then I found this definition in my lexicon I thought was incredible. To restore means to make one what he ought to be, which when I read that, I thought there's a lot of power in that, because you get to have a say in who that person is going forward. Will they stay a person who has betrayed you, a person that you hate, a person that you slander their name all over town? I hope not. because I'm going to betray you at some point. I'm going to let you down, and I hope that you'll restore me when that happens. And you're probably going to let me down or somebody around you, and I hope that we have the maturity to restore you when that moment happens. There are significant moments to make one what he ought to be. That doesn't mean there's not consequences, there's not justice, and there's not probation periods. There are consequences, there are probation periods, because otherwise the person would stay on the wrong path. That's not restoration. We want to put them on the right path. We want to restore and to help them to become really what they ought to be. I think that there's a powerful thing for us to walk away from today. To say, there's somebody in my life who I have decided will be a villain forever. Today, I want to ask you to do something really, really hard, almost impossible, which is to say, how could I restore that person? How could I restore them as God has restored me? I've heard old timers say my whole life, God never wastes a hurt. Don't you waste a hurt either. Psalm 107 has been our psalm, kind of the foundation psalm for this entire series of Breakthrough. It says, some sat in darkness and deepest gloom, imprisoned in iron chains of misery. Lord, help, they cried in their trouble. And he saved them from their distress. He led them from the deepest and darkest gloom. He snapped their chains. He broke down their prison gates of bronze. He cut apart their bars of iron. Breakthrough, set free. From this point forward, everything changes. That's what we want you to experience, to overcome the biggest things in our lives. Alex Honnold is a free climber, and he did a TED Talk. You can go watch it on YouTube if you haven't seen it. He talks about how he started climbing when he was 10 years old, and eventually after a few years moved outside, and then he even started free soloing, which means to climb without ropes. No ropes. And he started to get excited. He started to not just repeat other routes that other people had done, but he said, I want to do my own free solos. And I want to do new ones that nobody has free soloed before. And one of them was, it's a cliff face called Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. And so he went there and kind of mapped it out. And then he came and he said, I'm going to free solo it today. But as he was going up, he said, you know what? I don't really like that way. I'm going to go this way. Nobody had ever mapped out that way. So he kind of went up and he's feeling really confident and courageous until he came across a sheer granite slab about 500 feet up, a 2,000 sheer foot cliff face. And in the middle of that cliff face, he realized, I don't know where to put my hands. I don't know where to put my feet. I feel lost. Imagine being lost on the middle of a cliff face. And honestly, that's not a bad comparison for some of you in the way that you've gone through life. And you said, you know what? Everybody's going that way. I'm just going to go this way. I'm going to do my own thing. And you find yourself in a perilous situation where you feel like, if I thought everything was going to be fine. I thought I could do this. But now if I make one wrong move, everything's going to be destroyed. If I say one wrong thing, my marriage is over. If I do this wrong, my kids they're going to disown me. I haven't parented well for a long time. And if I do one wrong thing, I'm going to lose my kid. I'm going to lose my job. And you find yourself in a perilous situation. Now, thankfully, Alex did not slip and therefore did not die, because that's what would have happened if he had fallen and slipped in that position. But that night in his journal, he wrote down, I got to be better. He was not happy. He was scared to death. And he realized that he was a lucky climber in that day. He said, I don't want to be a lucky climber, because lucky climbers fall, and when they run out of luck, they die. He said, I want to be a great climber. So he got so scared, he took a year off of free soloing to just kind of get his mind back. But then a year came and went, and he started to free solo again. And he started to think about another potential climb that he could do. El Capitan, which is not the MacBook software. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about another even more incredible cliff face in Yosemite National Park that's 3,000 feet. 3,000 feet. And he started to envision and think, I'm gonna free solo El Capitan. I'll be the first person to ever free solo El Capitan. And every year, for 7 years, he would drive there thinking, this is the year that I free solo El Capitan. And then he would look at the cliff face and say, no way. And he would turn around. He did that for 7 years. And people said, why aren't you doing it? He said, you look at that. It's too scary. And I think that some of his pain and fear of what he had done in the past kind of played into that. But the thing kept sticking in his heart and his mind. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to do this. But in order to do this, he had to visualize every single movement, every single foothold, every single handhold of the entire route. And we've got just a picture of the route that you can see. He began to map out the entire thing. He memorized it. He could write down, hand goes here, foot goes here. You can see, there's actually a movie called Free Solo where you can see him writing down every single movement, the entire route. He memorized it. He knew it front and back. And he even visualized the emotion. What if I get too scared? What if I get too tired? And he had to visualize through that what he would do in those scenarios. He even went up with a friend and they spent the day removing all of the loose rocks so that there would be nothing to hinder his route as he climbed up. After 2 seasons of preparations and moving through every single situation, every handhold, every foothold, he finally felt confident. And on June 3rd of 2017, he set out to climb El Capitan. That morning, he ate breakfast at the foot of the cliff before the sun even rose, and he started climbing. 500 feet up, he came across a sheer granite slab, very similar to Half Dome, but this time, he knew every hand movement, he knew every foothold, and he felt confident as he climbed up. There was even a moment in the climb where there was this gap that he had to bridge, and if he had slipped, he would have absolutely fallen to his death. There it is right there. He called it the karate kick. He did a specific stretch every night for a year to make sure that he could achieve that movement. And you can see a little smirk on his face as he comes up here because he knows he just achieved mastery in that moment. The final 600 feet of his climb, he says he executed with smooth precision as he summited in 3 hours and 56 minutes, the first person, a breakthrough to Free Solo El Capitan. It's incredible. You should watch the movie. Your hands will sweat the whole time. But I tell you that because for some of you, there's a cliff face in front of you that is intimidating. It's scaring you to death. And for you, some of the things that I've asked you to do over the last few weeks and even today seem as unlikely as you climbing that cliff face. You think there's no way. I'm not calling that person. I'm not going to meet with them. I'm not climbing that cliff face. Listen. This isn't just about you. Because the thing that is in front of you, the obstacle that is holding you back, is also holding others back. It's holding your spouse back. It's holding your kids. You have generations who are waiting, who need you, because if you don't overcome this barrier that's in front of you, they will have to look at it and be intimidated by it as well. It is time for you to map out and to change your morning routine. You change how you talk to God. You change what you listen to and what you do and the conversations. You change your patterns and you start to say, how, if I was to overcome this thing, what would I need to do to train and to prepare to make this happen? Because there's people around who are counting on me. I have employees who are counting on me. I have a family, I have kids who are counting on me. I have neighbors who are counting on me. And if I don't climb this, then it will be standing there waiting for them, and they will be intimidated, and we will continue to suffer from the burden of this thing that we never broke through. It is time for you to do what it takes to overcome and to break through the barrier that has been holding you back. I really needed this series. I don't know about you guys. I think I needed it as much as anybody else. And I want to kind of close out today with a time of restoration. Jesus asked Peter 3 times the question, do you love me? And so I want to ask you the question in a moment of restoration and solidifying our conviction to break through and move forward. I want to ask you, do you love Jesus? And I want you to affirm it if you believe it. You don't have to if you don't, but if you do, you affirm it with strength and boldness today. And you say yes. Are you ready? Here we go. Do you love Jesus? If so, say yes. Then love and restore other people the way that God has loved and restored you. Do you love Jesus? Yes. Then trust that he is taking your difficult circumstances and the things that have been unfavorable, and he is using them to transform your life moving forward. Let me ask you a third time. Do you love Jesus? Yes. Then serve and obey him. Instead of serving and obeying some sin or brokenness in your life and some pattern that has crippled you and imprisoned you for years. God restores you, but it's up to you to follow his path forward. And the path is hard, but it is possible. It's not easy. But even now, you can visualize your next step moving forward. Even now, you can start to transform what is happening and what will be overcome for you and in your life. We want to mark the moment of restoration today by doing several things in response. We're going to take communion together. We're going to sing some songs. We're going to do some baptisms. Let me first say this. We're going to take communion together, and we're going to stand as we take communion, which for some of you is going to be like, I usually sit, and now we're going to stand. And do I pass? Yes, you're just standing, and the tray goes by. You just pass it. You take the stack of cups. It'll be okay. But we want to stand today, to stand in the boldness and the courageous moment to say Jesus broke through sin and death and even betrayal and pain and all these things for us. And so we will stand in confidence in that moment. So would you just stand with me all around the room right now? And you know what else we're going to do during these next 3 songs? We're going to have some people up front who you need to step up to and ask for prayer. And there are things in your life that have been holding you back and barriers. And so I'm going to ask Anna and Nate. They're going to come up here. They're on staff. These are safe places to turn to. And I want you to come and say, hey, there's a barrier in my life. I need prayer. I need God to help me break through this thing. And maybe you don't even come by yourself. Maybe you come with your kids or your family or your friend. And you say, hey, will you come with me? I got to pray for breakthrough on this thing. And then you know what else is going to happen? I'm going to be over there by those doors. And we have a table with towels on them. And some of you need to come and grab a towel and get baptized today. What are you waiting for? You need to mark breakthrough in your life. I'm telling you what. There are a lot of things that we love about church, but that's the reason why we're here today. We love singing songs. We love hearing messages. We love eating donuts. I mean, all this stuff's good. But the reason we're here, there's nothing we would celebrate more than you giving your life to Christ today. Amen? Is that true? That's why we're here. We'll get out of your way. We will walk with you. If you need to turn your life over to Christ and mark breakthrough in your life by being baptized, you walk over there, grab a towel, and we will do that today. But don't miss this moment. You walk out of here today, don't be the same person. Don't be the same person who says, I'm not going to climb that mountain. No, you take that step. You move into that, and you mark that in a moment of communion, in a time of prayer. Maybe you need to confess something, say, this thing's been holding me back. I've been scared of it for a long time. You release it. You engage it. You restore it. You mark the breakthrough. Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, as we come into your presence, as we acknowledge that you are here with us, that you are our advocate, that you are the defender, you are the one who has broken through and changed what is possible for us, we cry out to you now, Lord, knowing that the way forward is not easy, but it is possible. And so we rely upon you. And I pray that even now in this moment, Holy Spirit, you would turn those who have been timid into those who are strong, those who have denied into those who are loved, and those who are restored. And we just cry out to you, Lord, as we commune with you, as we drink juice and eat bread that represents your body and your blood, just celebrating and honoring your breakthrough. Would you restore us and renew our hearts? We want to follow you even more faithfully in breakthrough from this moment forward. It's in the name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.